Hey, it's just Mark here. All right. So today I kind of want to talk about relationships and what I've learned in my 40 years of relationships. Now, I've got varying experiences, and not everyone's experience will be the same. But these are just some lessons that I've learned over time. May help you not make the same mistakes that I did over time, and maybe will help you look out for certain things as you venture into your next round of relationships, or if you're a single person. So yeah. Anyways, let's get to it. All right. So, as I was saying, one of the first questions you should ask yourself in any relationship you're a part of is, do I like myself when I'm with this person? Are you happy? Are you joyous? Are you encouraged? Are you encouraging them? Or are you trying to win the relationship or do things like that? But are you, we when we're in the beginning stage, we're of course gonna like who we are with them because we're happy. We're excited. We're sharing on social media. We're doing all the things that we feel are going to help that relationship, and all that kind of stuff. But as time goes on and the real people come out, yourself as well as that person, do you like who you are? Are you constantly stressed in the relationship? Are you happy? Are you still doing things that excite you? And are you, progressing? Are you becoming a worse person? Are you starting to put things aside that maybe you didn't before? Are you spending less time with people who are important to you? Are you starting to cheat yourself out of experiences and things because of that person? Are you stressed all the time? These are just some things to think about as you progress in relationships. I know in some, the whole time we were together was great until it wasn't. And then I became miserable and I wanted out. And sometimes I didn't know how to get out. And truth is, I didn't get out. I just kept going. I kept plugging along saying, I've got to make this work, for various reasons. Maybe I thought that person was important to me. Maybe I thought that I could improve the situation or themselves, but it didn't happen. The other lesson I kind of learned as I went along is, don't lose yourself to make someone else happy. And I say this as kindly as I can because, think about your interests, the things you like to do, how you like to spend your time. Have you stopped doing the things you like to do that bring your life joy? I was a regular doing photography, for example. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And then the relationship became comfortable. And I stopped doing that. Heck, in my final year, I made a lot of money doing photography. I had so many weddings booked and so many things booked that I was doing that I was happy and successful. And that was something I enjoyed. I was also volunteering on a regular basis through things like the Alberta Children's Hospital. And as a volunteer photographer, I was learning a lot of things and trying to excel at different things. But I lost myself. And I think to some degree, the person I was with at that time also lost part of herself because we became comfortable and we stopped exploring. I know at times we both encouraged each other to do those things and continue those interests, but eventually we left it by the wayside. I think due to comfort, stress, the way life goes. And the biggest thing I learned is I can't allow myself to lose myself when I'm with somebody anymore. I have to continue doing what I enjoy doing. Otherwise, I am bloody miserable. And you will be too. Disagreements. Let's talk about disagreements. Disagreements are healthy. I'm not much of an arguer. In fact, I'll try to avoid conflict if I can. I don't like yelling. I don't like fighting. And most times things can be solved with a conversation. But disagreements are healthy. You are two people trying to meld a relationship, two different people trying to put a relationship together. You're going to have different opinions on everything from, kids, eating habits, politics, religion, futures, retirement. And to disagree is okay, but to never be open to the other's opinion is not okay. And that's never a good thing. You have to be okay sometimes compromising and coming to mutual decisions. Like one of my non-negotiables for the longest time was I wanted to be with someone who wanted kids. Well, now I'm 47. I have no kids. Not one single relationship I was in ever said no to wanting children, but those relationships never brought me there. And I've had a lot of disagreements, and in some relationships we've just talked it out and moved on and went forward from those disagreements and came to a solution or a compromise, and it worked out really well. It also comes down to making sure the person you're with doesn't feel they're always right and you're not always right, which kind of leads me into another lesson I've learned is your partner does not have to be toxic for your relationship to be toxic. There are many unhealthy things. There are many unhealthy things that can happen in a relationship because of toxic individuals, toxic situations. I know in a recent relationship, things were great, but everything around us was toxic. We were always on edge, waiting for the next fight, waiting for the next argument, disagreement, and I get it. It involved, a family and kids that weren't mine and stuff like that. But the relationship, when I look back, there were too many toxic moments, and we probably shouldn't have lasted as long as we did. It can be dealing with exes, unresolved issues. It can be, again, going back to disagreements. It can be things such as, what you value for your time versus what they value for theirs. It can be financial. Everything can be toxic, and it doesn't mean your ex is toxic. It means that the relationship itself is toxic because there's so much going on around you that sometimes you forget about the two of you. I've been there, and it's not fun. This kind of ties in with protecting your peace. This is something that I value now, especially that I'm a single guy. I enjoy not having the stress of a relationship or those disagreements or that toxicity that surrounded certain things. But protecting my peace was something I tried in a few of my relationships, and I failed because I didn't set boundaries and I allowed things to happen. And even when I set boundaries, I would set them loosely and they would be broken. Therefore, I was now stressed or upset or feeling left out or alone or frustrated. Keeping your peace in a relationship, and that's for both of you. And that means, keep your own interests, do your own thing sometimes. You don't have to be together 24/7 because that's not keeping the peace. That's falling into being comfortable and thinking you can't do anything without that other individual around. So I know now, as a single guy, if I got into another relationship, which I'm not actively seeking one, nor do I care if one ever happens again, protecting my peace and my, sanity for a little bit is important. And that goes along with making sure I'm not involved in a toxic relationship or toxic situations anymore. This one that I'm going to talk about now is probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned. You are not responsible for your partner's past or their unresolved issues or the things that hold them back. Yes, you can help change some perceptions and the things they think about themselves and, encourage them and do that kind of stuff. But if they don't deal with the stuff they've had in the past, it's not your problem. Well, I guess it kind of is because it becomes a problem in the relationship. But you are not responsible for what they haven't dealt with. And you're not responsible for their past. Their past happened. And maybe it takes you showing them that you're not that person or that guy or that girl. You're not the guy who's going to go and be an asshole. You're not the girl who's going to go and cheat and seek the attention of other men. That you're not that person, and you're giving them that love and the acceptance that they deserve. And I know in many of my relationships, some of my ex's past and mine too affected it big time. I've got issues I have to deal with. I've always had issues I've had to deal with. Everybody has their own baggage. But if you allow your baggage and your insecurities and your things to affect your relationship, you're making it toxic for your partner. Deal with your shit, and just know that you are not responsible for what happened to them in the past. And maybe you need to show them that. But at the end of the day, no matter how much you show them that you're not their past, it'll never change. They'll always doubt. They'll always wonder what you're going to do next. Maybe even some of their family members will question it and go, oh, well, maybe he'll cheat. Maybe she will, I don't know, what do women do half the time? Maybe she'll stop communicating. Maybe she'll make her own decisions and run away from the fear. Maybe he'll run away from something he becomes fearful of. But you're not responsible for that. Just know that. It's something I've learned, and something that I'm hoping that if I get in another relationship, I can remember that for myself. And kind of the last important thing I want to talk about is communication is key. Early on in a relationship, most couples talk for hours on end, whether it's on the phone or whether it's in the car after a date, or, you put on a movie and instead of watching the movie, you're just talking. You talk about your interests, your things that excite you, what you want to do with your life. You talk about where you want to see the relationship going. Maybe some of your things that you want, like, do you want kids? Do you want a house? Do you want to move in together? But communication is key. When the communication stops, and I've been there, I have stopped communicating at various points in certain relationships. And for me, most times it's because I felt unappreciated. I felt like I wasn't being heard. I felt like what I said didn't matter, and that everyone else around them, that person, mattered. And that's in a couple of my relationships, not just recent ones, some in my 20s. I mean, gosh, I tried to communicate with one girl years ago in my 20s that I wasn't comfortable with how much she enjoyed the attention of other men. Oh, they called me pretty today, or they like my blouse, or they want to hang out for coffee. I tried communicating it, wasn't heard. There's other times that I would communicate my stress and how certain things were affecting me. And after a while, I just stopped communicating because nothing changed. Nothing happened. If there's a problem in your relationship, talk about it. Don't run away from it. I remember not really understanding why my last relationship ended, and to some degree, I still don't. But I moved on from that. And I remember talking about going to counseling and was told that's not happening. If you can't resolve or figure out what's wrong with your relationship together by communicating, by being honest, because some things are going to hurt when you communicate, but sometimes they need to be said. There's things I didn't say that I should have at various points. And, I've never been perfect in a relationship, but I know I've tried. I've even tried to communicate various things throughout my history and my past that kind of failed. And I know that others have tried to communicate with me, and I started tuning them out because most times it didn't matter to me anymore. Stopped caring. And usually if you or your partner stop caring, that's something that one or both of you have done to break that bond and that trust and that communication. So the last thing I want to talk about really is that relationships can be fun. I know people who have been married for, 20, 25 years. They met in high school and their relationship has been great since. And I think it's great for them. But they've always told me it was never easy. They had to work through issues. They had to communicate. They had to push. And they had to remember why they fell in love in the first place. So if you're watching this and you're in a relationship that's struggling or you're not sure of, think about why you fell in love with that person in the first place. And understand that you're both going to evolve and change. Because remembering that love will help you maybe rekindle that love and help them go forward. You both go forward in the relationship. I used to believe strongly in getting married and having kids and having a family. And now I don't. And that's because nothing's worked to this point for me. You kind of have to make yourself and your partner feel like a priority. And if you're not a priority, then why be in the relationship? And I don't think there's anybody out there who will make me a priority. And that's okay, because I've made myself a priority. Anyways, that's kind of my experience. And I know it sounds a little bit down, but these are lessons I've learned. I mean, I wish someone could have told me some of these things 20 years ago so that I maybe wasn't as immature in some relationships in my 20s and my 30s. Or that as my other relationships matured, that I set more boundaries, talked more, communicated more, and made sure that when I felt like I wasn't being heard, that I really communicated so I could be heard. You know, conversations aren't a 2-minute chat in a car about something you're worried about. They're a sit down, talk about it, hash it out, even if it hurts. Anyways, I wish you all the best in your relationships. Maybe one day I'll find one of my own. Maybe I'll find someone to spend the rest of my life with. But for now, this guy enjoys being single. Cheers. I will see you on the next one. Have a good night, or a good day, or whatever. It's bright out.